What does Five Nights at Freddy's Ruin hide off camera during the second chapter? As we enter the daycare once again in the Ruin DLC, it's a lot less colorful and cheerful. However, beyond this destruction and decay are some pretty interesting things that are hidden. So we're going to head out of bounds and take a look at things you normally can't see, while also breaking the game a bit. Like, look at this! It's the undamaged Glamrock Freddy, and if we get inside of him, we can softlock this creepy cyber bunny. How perfect! So I hope you enjoyed this game-breaking experience of Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, the Ruin DLC. So, let's run through a very quick recap of the daycare area in Ruin. You start off running through some arcade cabinets before making your way into the playground. Moon then jump scares you and tries to rip off your forearm, but fails to realize you're Popeye's daughter, and eventually gets blasted by your flashlight. We must then make our way around the daycare interior, powering up generators to shine lights on Moon, and then ultimately sneaking up behind them and resetting them to Eclipse. We then fly across the map as the door shuts behind us. We now need to make our way into the theater by disabling some nodes, and once inside, the ultimate goal is to dispel the anomalies on the camera system and then climb down this big dude's throat. With that, the daycare is cleared. So the very first thing I was curious about in the daycare was the areas surrounding it. Normally, these blocked off staircases would lead us up and around and eventually to the rest of the pizzaplex. So I totally need to see what's up there in Ruin. Now, as we make our way up these staircases, we'll see that the area up here looks a bit empty. We have several doors and rollerboards in this hallway, but the rooms beyond them don't exist. We're currently in the real world, so looking down below we can see the augmented reality version of this map that appears when you put the Vanny mask on. Swapping between the two worlds, you can see there's a slight difference of map placement between the two. So there are also elevators up here as well, despite them being blocked off down below. There's nothing inside of them, however. The gray and blue gates up here don't open either, but we can find that secret security camera back here that is used to unlock one of the 4 doors in the bonus ending. Running to the front of the daycare, where we would normally come in, we can see the area is completely empty, and trying to go beyond the main gate leads to nowhere. However, way out in the distance, beyond this main gate, we can find something neat. It's Eclipse Boy in the middle of doing a jumping jack, combining the T-pose and an A-pose. Not too surprising, we can find a severed pair of arms out here holding a flashlight. It looks like Eclipse is stepping all over them too. Seeing as the first jump scare is the Moon trying to grab the player, it makes sense these will be stored out here like Chica was in Chapter 1. While they are frozen out here, we can take a closer look at the circuit board in their back. It definitely looks pretty archaic, given the technology available within the pizzaplex. So below this map, we do have the AR version of it that has these purple hazy clouds. And in both versions of the map, we have these star and moon decorations that are actually beneath the floor in both instances. We also have some very impressive out-of-bounds rectangles and ceiling pieces, a rare treat, alongside this thing. It looks like a donut made of slime. Anyone recognize what this is? Let me know in the comments. The last out-of-bounds thing can be found behind the ticket booth area that is normally inaccessible. Back there, we can find 2 floating pencils in the void. So we're gonna kinda break things now. Usually, we encounter Ruined Moon as soon as we enter the daycare, but if we phase through the wall, we can skip this. This prevents the daycare attendant from loading in up top. So if we were then to go inside the daycare and make our way up to a generator, we can click it on and see a very anticlimactic cutscene, as, well, nothing happens. Moon will still yell at us despite not being there. Even though the daycare attendant isn't up top, the trigger for this character still is though. So if we walk up to where we normally reboot them, we'll get jump scared by the Moon. Trying to watch this from another angle, this time I actually got the other jump scare where the Moon drops down from the ceiling. Watching this play out in slow motion is definitely a treat, as Cassie gets grabbed and then pulled into the air as if the Moon is a wallmaster from Zelda. I love the daycare attendant's animations, as there's truly a lot of care put into them. So if the daycare attendant can still kill you, let's try something odd. So I spawn in Glamrock Freddy from the security breach side of things and take shelter inside of him. So Freddy can't get jump scared. So we can now walk over to where the jump scare happens, and we can see that there's a spherical or capsule-shaped collider around where the Moon should be. I can't walk through it, and this is where the daycare attendant is standing, although they're currently unloaded. So we're going to eject ourselves right next to them, and we're now going to try to interact with the daycare attendant. And suddenly, they appear as we reboot them. Dang, Cassie, you're so talented. We can watch this play out in slow motion, as Freddy just sits there with his chest cavity open. The arm placement for Cassie is a bit impossible given her size, but because she's just a floating pair of arms, she can do whatever. It's neat watching this reset in slow motion, because normally the animation is very twitchy with a hint of malfunctioning. and I feel like you can appreciate it a bit more. Eventually, the daycare attendant, now dubbed Eclipse, picks us up. And then we begin to magically fly around the daycare. I never really understood how this animatronic can fly, but it is definitely a very convenient way to exit this place. Strangely, I spot the moon version up in the sky while all of this is going on. With it, we can see it is the final frame of the moon jump scare, as Cassie normally gets pulled into the air. Even her arms are up there too. We eventually make it through the front door, and Eclipse makes it painfully clear they don't allow solicitors here, as they slam the door in our face. We can see that as soon as I shut the door and move off to the left, they just unload. But this also triggers the whole daycare interior to unload a moment later. We can see our boy Freddy sitting over here with the moon directly above him, and then all of this just goes poof into thin air as Freddy falls. Luckily, he lands on solid ground. Trying to enter the daycare now, we can see there are limited areas we can walk on, and I, accidentally fell into the great beyond, like usual. So what's odd is that when restarting this area, we can find the moon above us. So for some reason, the end frame of the jump scare is just stuck up in the sky under Mr. Fazbear himself. For reference, we have to reboot Eclipse again, so this is before that has taken place. After all that is done, I head back into the unloaded daycare to find Glamrock Freddy again, and as you can see, the moon won't try to jump scare us at all. He just sort of hangs out up there. Only one section of the daycare does not unload, and I believe it's because it is one of the tallest areas that can possibly be seen from elsewhere. We can go over to it in either the AR world or the real one, and we can hear the Cyber Rabbit MXCS load in to try to get us. He just sort of floats in the void and can walk to the edge of where the jungle gym is. Their navigational mesh must still be intact despite the level unloading. If we linger too long, an Endo will warp over here and jump scare us out on our floating fortress. But we still got some jump scare animations to cover in the actual daycare area, so let's rewind time. So as we make our way into the daycare, the first ramp we go up has a jump scare trigger right beyond the yellow square. And when we get just beyond this, we can see the moon just loads in below us and starts grabbing our arm. Moon just sort of hangs there and yanks until eventually they get flashed by the flashlight, and then they fall down below all dramatically. During this free fall, Moon sort of flops around quickly before getting dragged horizontally under where we are standing. If we look down below us, their bodies all jumbled up and their head appears to be cut off. It looks really strange. But to get a closer look, let's do this again. So when we trigger this jump scare, this out of bounds Eclipse we talked about before seemingly duplicates itself and then warps over to the map. This time we're going to delete the objects in our way though so we can see better. So now Moon is just kind of floating on nothing while playing out the animation. As they get blinded by the light, they rev up and go under us. We can see that this breaks their neck geometry. This was causing my computer to lag quite a bit, but a moment later, Moon then unloads. So not long after this jump scare, we have to use our Vanny mask to pass through some objects. The second we do so, a malfunctioning Eclipse jumps down and begs for us to blast them with some light. A moment later, they then swap to the moon face and fly away. So off camera, we can see that Eclipse just instant transmissions above us as they fall down below. We can watch this play out in slow motion in Tron World as they explain what we have to do. We can also watch Moon pop out with a slick head rotation before this dude just straight up Peter Pans across the room. We can follow this graceful flying motion, and it really makes you wonder just how advanced Fazbear technology is. As Eclipse comes to rest up above, we can see the model swap out to the default idle animation. At the same moment, Moon spawns in up above in the real world. While I was up here though, I did want to check out this area that the daycare attendant jumps from in Security Breach. And as you can see, just like a magician, there's nothing behind the curtain, except for these weird light things. Or are they microphones? I can't tell. Let's move on though. So once outside the daycare area, I decided to mess with the Cyber Rabbit once again. So it turns out, if you were to hide within Freddy the moment the rabbit tries to jump scare you with the instant death buildup, it will break the logic of the game. So this jump scare won't trigger, and you won't die. Instead, the Cyber Rabbit just soft locks in place and just looks at you. It will no longer pursue you, and it will also not despawn. There's no insanity buildup either, so basically, he's our friend now. Good job, Freddy! Before we head into the theater, there's a room full of junk that we can only enter with the Vanny mask on. This has a collectible bag here, but we can't get in this room in the real world. If we hack our way back here though, we can see how the room is actually laid out, because normally most of the entrance is blocked off. It is just a storage area, but I'm always surprised at just how many products Fazcorp has their hands in, including bleach and cleaning supplies. So the theater has a lot of destruction surrounding it in tons of blocked off areas. So let's check out behind some of this rubble. So this cave-in back here prevents you from going to this back hallway, which we'll check out this hallway I'm referring to in a moment. But this other debris blocks off the staircase to the upper level seats. And if we bypass this debris, we can actually reach the top of the theater. This area does have collision, but it is missing some walls, as you can see. However, the platform leading to where the chairs are does not have collision, so we fall into the floor. The banisters and chairs don't have colliders either, so we can just walk through them. But let's take a look at a wide shot of this area so we can appreciate this environment more. Now as I'm flying around, you'll see the AR version of this map down below, but you'll also notice a strange floating vent structure behind the normal world map. And this is one of those areas that does not match up with what the game is trying to have you believe. These vents are used for transitioning to Monty Golf, and we'll check them out in just a second. Way down below, we'll find a single piece of a vent floating in the augmented reality world, and I'm not entirely sure what it is used for. So let's check out this back hallway real quick before showing the magic behind that vent section. So this area is normally where you access the basement below the theater, but as you can see, the staircase in this hallway is gone. However, it's really interesting that this area has graffiti, because that means at one point you might have been able to come back here. Otherwise, why would the developers add graffiti to walls you can never see? It makes you wonder. Now back in the main room, we have to solve the camera anomaly puzzle to move on. And during these camera sections in-game, we can see Cassie is fully modeled. So we can take a closer look at her with the Vanny mask on, which is something you really don't ever see from an outside perspective. The mask clips through her face a bit, but it fits pretty snug. Now the second we clear this puzzle, you'll see the giant endoskeleton instantly appears. This bad boy just spawns, and we're tasked with entering its mouth. Behind the scenes, we can see he's only half an endoskeleton though, and his body stops halfway down. We can get a better look at this endo later on since he doesn't unload. So we hop down into this hole, and the second we touch the ground, there's a trigger to play audio. But this panel we are touching down here has a special property that overwrites the mask's warping ability. So if the player were to warp with the mask under normal conditions, it would place us far above this giant endoskeleton in the real world, which for this section doesn't exist. In fact, it's basically almost in a death plane, so it would kill the player. And putting that mask on up here in the void perfectly lines up with appearing within the endo down below. It also replays the falling audio. In fact, if we toggle on the player's collider, we can have this event play over and over again, while my ears bleed from Cassie's scream. Glorious! But hey, I'm a nice guy, so I'll share my suffering with you. Just take a listen.
Help! Help! Help!
So while the player is touching this energy-looking floor, putting the Vanny mask on will instead warp them vertically and horizontally across the map, something that breaks the normal warping conventions for this mask. So instead, it warps us over to the flooding section of the vents that are out of bounds. And this breaks the building's continuity a bit, as the theater and Monty Golf normally aren't this close together. This also unloads the environment, so we can see the giant endoskeleton more clearly now. It looks so happy. Random, but before moving on, I found something odd beneath FNAF Ruin's Daycare. As soon as you load up Chapter 2, our character appears right here. But the second this happens, a Daycare building block begins to fall from the bottom of the map. This is weird because a lot of the objects in this game can't freefall or be pushed by the player, but these blocks can be. And if we were to go to this forever falling box, we can see if we touch it, it goes flying. Not sure why this is here, but it's down here, falling for all of eternity. Now, let's go back to those vents. We can't explore these vents fully though, and we can see that they just sort of abruptly end in the areas we can't view. We can also walk on top of them too for a nice out-of-bounds street. Now, way off in the distance, we can find our ride that we fall into right after these vents. Cassie's arms are stored over here too, as will be some vent-related objects shortly. So the second Cassie starts talking about the vent being creaky, in that same spot, we'll now find those vent objects used for the cutscene. And we can watch this collapse take place from behind the scenes. Now the Monty Golf area is loaded in down below, so we can slide into this pipe and straight into our ride. And with that brings us to the end of Chapter 2 in the Daycare. I hope you guys enjoyed this behind the scenes look, and hey, we just hit 1 million subscribers, so thank you all so much. As always, I'll see you in my next video real soon. Cheers!